Let me ask you something that might sting a little. When was the last time you betrayed yourself just to keep the peace? How many times have you swallowed your truth because you were afraid your voice would cost you love, respect, or belonging? I still remember that day so vividly, like it's burned into my bones. I was standing there, trying to smile, trying to look agreeable, trying so hard to be what they needed me to be. But it's been a while. I was standing there trying to be what they needed me to be. And when I stand out, I feel solace, tried hard, and when I feel solace, tried hard, and, I feel solace, inside though, I felt this storm. My gut was screaming, no, please, no, but my mouth said yes. And as soon as I heard myself say it, I felt this hollow, sinking feeling, like I'd just handed over a piece of myself and watched it slip away. And what's wild is that on the outside, it looked so small. It was just a simple favor, a harmless request, something that shouldn't have been such a big deal, but it was. Because it wasn't about the thing itself, it was about me betraying what I needed, what I wanted, what I knew was right for me in that moment. And I remember later when I was alone, that ache in my chest, that quiet grief of knowing I'd abandoned myself to make someone else comfortable. We do this so often, don't we? We agree to things that don't feel right. We smile when we want to cry. We nod when everything in us is begging us to shake our head, because deep down, we're afraid. We're afraid that saying no will make us look selfish or rude or difficult. We're afraid that our no will cost us love or belonging or safety. And so, to protect ourselves, or at least what we think will protect us, we say yes and we hope it will hurt less. But it always hurts more. Psychologists call it fawning. It's a survival response. It's what happens when pleasing others becomes a way to stay safe. When our nervous system tells us that the best way to avoid danger, whether it's rejection, conflict, or abandonment, is to make sure everyone else is okay, even if we're not. It's our inner child trying to protect us from what once felt unbearable, disconnection. But here's the cost. Every time we say yes when we mean no, we drift a little further away from ourselves. We lose clarity about who we are and what we need. And we begin to believe that our worth is tied to our ability to keep others happy, even if it leaves us empty. What I've learned through tears, through therapy, through failing at it 100 times, is this: your no is sacred. Your no is a boundary. And boundaries aren't walls that keep people out, they're doors that let the right people in. Because the ones who truly see you, who truly love you, will respect your no just as much as your yes. And maybe the most painful part of all this is realizing that the peace we think we're keeping by saying yes, it's not really peace at all. It's just quiet conflict inside us. I can still feel the weight of it, the fear of being too much, too emotional, too sensitive, too loud, too needy, too intense. I spent so much of my life editing myself, trimming the edges of my personality, softening my voice, shrinking my feelings, all so no one would ever look at me and think, she's too much to handle. I became so good at it that I could walk into a room and immediately sense what version of myself would be most acceptable. And that's the version I'd offer every single time. I remember one night sitting in my car after a gathering where I'd barely spoken, barely laughed, barely let myself be seen, and I just broke down. Tears pouring down my face, not because anyone had hurt me, but because I had hurt myself. Again, I had once more abandoned my truth in exchange for the comfort of being liked or at least tolerated. I kept asking myself, why do I do this? Why am I so afraid of letting people see all of me? And the answer came quietly, but it hit like a thunderclap. Because somewhere along the way, I learned that the real me, the full me, was too much. That my big feelings, my big ideas, my big heart would overwhelm people, would drive them away, and what I wanted more than anything was to belong, to be chosen, to be safe. So I became small, not physically, but emotionally, spiritually. I shrunk my voice, I swallowed my needs, I folded myself into neat little shapes that would fit inside someone else's comfort zone. And maybe you've done this too. Maybe you've felt that same fear. If I show them all of me, they'll leave. If I feel too deeply, they'll call me dramatic. If I need too much, they'll call me clingy. But here's what I've learned, and it's both painful and freeing. It's not our too muchness that pushes the right people away. It's our hiding. The people who are meant for us don't need us to be smaller. They don't need us to dilute ourselves. They don't need us to wear a mask. In fact, the ones who can truly love us, see us, and stand beside us, they can only find us when we stop hiding, when we stop apologizing for the space we take up. Psychology tells us that authenticity is the birthplace of true connection. When we shrink ourselves, we don't actually protect ourselves. We just build a cage that keeps us lonely. And the tragic part is that cage, we build it with our own hands. Every time we silence our truth, every time we second guess our feelings, every time we tell ourselves we're too much to be loved as we are. But the raw truth is this: you were never too much. Maybe you were just in places or with people who couldn't hold the beauty of your fullness. That's not your shame to carry. That's not your burden to bear. Speaking up doesn't make you too much. It makes you honest. And honesty is never too much. I'll never forget the first time I truly heard my own voice. Not the one I'd trained myself to use, not the one that played it safe or softened itself to keep the peace, but my real voice, the voice that had always been there, buried under years of self-doubt, people-pleasing, and fear. It happened in the most unexpected moment. I wasn't planning to speak up. I wasn't rehearsing in my head, crafting the perfect words to make sure no one felt uncomfortable. I was sitting at a table during a conversation that had crossed a line, where someone said something that cut right through my values, my beliefs, what I knew in my bones was right. And before I could overthink it, before I could talk myself out of it, my voice came out. It wasn't loud, it wasn't polished. In fact, it shook, it cracked. It sounded smaller than I imagined it would. But it was mine. There was no performance in it, no mask, no effort to make it palatable or pleasing. Just truth, just me. And I remember the split second after I spoke, when everything felt still. My heart was pounding so loud in my ears, I could barely hear the response. My hands were trembling. I was sure I had ruined everything, that people would think I was difficult, dramatic, or emotional. But you know what? Nothing exploded. No one ran from the table. The world didn't end. And more than that, I realized I liked the sound of my own truth, because in that moment, I belonged to myself. And it felt right. It felt like finally coming home after years of wandering lost. Here's what we don't talk about enough. Confidence doesn't start as a roar. It starts as a whisper. A fragile, trembling whisper that barely makes it past your lips. But that whisper, that's where it begins. That's the moment you start remembering who you are beneath all the layers you've put on to survive. And every time you let yourself speak from that place, your place, you strengthen it, you come alive. That first whisper of truth is the seed of self-trust. And from there, your voice will grow. And maybe the most beautiful part, that trembling voice, that whisper of truth is enough. It's not about how loud you are, it's about how honest you're willing to be. Your voice may tremble, but it is still powerful. There was a day I wish I could go back to a moment that still aches when I think about it. I was in a room where something was happening that went against everything I stood for. I felt it in my gut, the wrongness of it, the heaviness of it. But I stayed silent. I kept my head down. I avoided eye contact. I told myself, don't make it worse, don't make it awkward, just let it pass. And on the surface, that's exactly what happened. The moment passed, the room moved on, but inside me, something broke. I remember going home that night and sitting in the dark, feeling this deep, quiet shame. Not because of what had been said or done in that room, but because I hadn't spoken. Because I had abandoned my own values in the name of keeping the peace. Because I had silenced myself to avoid discomfort. And in doing so, I had betrayed not just the truth, but myself. And what's so painful is that silence can feel like the safer choice in the moment. We tell ourselves, I'm being the bigger person. I'm keeping the peace. I'm choosing harmony over conflict. But what kind of peace is it really when it comes at the cost of our own integrity? What kind of harmony is it when it leaves us feeling fractured inside? Psychologists call this moral injury. It's what happens when we act or fail to act in a way that violates our deepest values. And here's the thing, moral injury doesn't go away on its own. It lingers. It shows up as anxiety, as self-doubt, as this quiet grief we carry for the parts of ourselves we left unprotected. And maybe that's the most painful betrayal of all, the one we commit against ourselves. Because when we stay silent in the face of what matters, we're not really protecting anyone. We're just postponing the conflict. We're just shifting the weight of that hard moment onto our own heart. And that weight doesn't get lighter with time. It gets heavier. What I've learned through my own silences, through my own regrets, is this. The discomfort of speaking up lasts a moment. The ache of staying silent can last a lifetime. And while your voice might not change everything, it will change you. It will remind you who you are. It will keep you whole. Silence in the face of your own truth isn't peacekeeping. It's self-abandonment. There's a moment in every person's life when you realize no one is coming to rescue you from your silence. No one is going to hand you permission to be who you are, to want what you want, to say what you need. That permission, it has to come from you. I was standing at a crossroads, not a literal one, but the kind you feel in your soul. I could keep bending, shrinking, and shaping myself to fit what everyone else wanted, or I could finally, painfully, bravely choose me. Out loud, without apology. It wasn't some grand cinematic moment. It was small, quiet, just me and my truth, sitting together in the dark of my own doubt. I was terrified. Because choosing myself meant risking what I feared most, that people might not like the real me, that I might lose approval, connection, even love. And maybe that's why so many of us stay silent, because we're not just afraid of speaking our truth, we're afraid of what our truth might cost us. But here's what no one tells you. Choosing yourself doesn't start with confidence. It starts with heartbreak. The heartbreak of realizing how long you've abandoned yourself in little ways. The heartbreak of seeing how much of your life has been shaped by what other people wanted, needed, expected, and the heartbreak of knowing that speaking your truth might change things, that some people might leave, that some relationships might shift, that some doors might close. But, and this is the part that saved me, the doors that close when you choose yourself, they were never meant for you. The people who fall away when you stand in your truth, they weren't really holding you, they were holding a version of you that wasn't real. And that is not your loss. Psychologists talk about self-betrayal, the quiet ways we abandon ourselves for acceptance, approval, or belonging. But they also talk about self-ownership, the moment we reclaim our voice, our worth, our right to take up space. That moment isn't loud or flashy, it's steady. It's the moment you stop waiting for someone else to choose you and you choose yourself instead. And when you do that, when you say, this is who I am, this is what I need, this is what I believe, you'll feel something you might not have felt in a long time. Peace. Not the fragile peace that comes from avoiding conflict, but the deep, unshakable peace that comes from finally living in alignment with yourself. Confidence isn't about volume. It's about alignment. The moment your voice matches your truth. So here's the question I'll leave you with tonight. What truth are you ready to say out loud? Not for them, but for you. Because you deserve to hear it, and so does the world.